Eric Averill, and I'm joined by my partner Brandon Averill. Today,
Disclaimer: Eric Averill and Brandon Averill are the co-founders of AWM Capital. Due to industry regulations, it's essential to explicitly state that investment or strategies mentioned on this podcast may not be suitable for you, and you should discuss your specific situation with a qualified, certified financial planner. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of AWM Capital or its affiliates. For more information, visit athleteceo.com.
hey there, Athlete CEO listeners. I'm your host, Eric Averill from Athlete Wealth, and you're listening to the Athlete CEO podcast. Each week, we aim to bring you world-class interviews with some of the brightest and successful entrepreneurs, athletes, and business minds today, sharing actionable insight on how to get more out of your business, finances, and life. You won't be hearing any vague theory or strategies from us. Our guests have walked the walk and are committed to sharing the best of what they know so you can apply the lessons they've learned. Whether you're an athlete, entrepreneur, or just looking to hear from some crazy successful guests, this podcast is for you. Now, enough with the intro. Let's dive into today's show. Today's show, I sit down with AJ Nikowski, CEO and founder of Lumberland Company, home of the original Bat Mug. I'm excited for you guys to follow AJ's journey from injured athlete to business owner of one of the fastest growing companies in the sports industry. On today's episode, we'll hear how a locker room conversation actually turned into a seven-figure business and what were their keys to success. Three of the main takeaways are: first, for athletes and influencers, what's the criteria that companies like Lumberland are looking for in the athletes and influencers who they partner with? Second, for AJ, what is the one practice that he uses that he believes has made him both most successful as a business owner and as a person? And then third, where's the opportunity online for companies to grow? And so without further ado, let's tune into my conversation with AJ Nikowski.
Well, AJ, thanks for being on the show today. This is, for me, a real privilege and opportunity. I was thinking before we ended up taping this right here, I was thinking back to how we met. And I thought it was pretty funny because, as you can imagine, working with athletes, there are a lot of ideas that come across our clients' really desks. And it was about 2 years ago, I think you were in Scottsdale with Tyler Beatty, one of our clients, and Tyler was super excited about this product, and I really enjoyed meeting you, and you actually had one of the prototypes with you, and I was like, man, this is an awesome product. But in the back of my mind, I'm just sitting there going, this is really hard to execute. And so didn't think much of it. Fast forward 2 years later, and here we are, and you guys are growing like a weed. And so really excited just to hear how it went from a locker room conversation to actually a business. So thanks for taking the time and being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for asking. It is pretty cool to go all the way back to when I met you, which was it was literally coming to market. Like, that was the first month that we had begun selling the product. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's a great place for us to start, is talk about the genesis of how it started, how you guys actually launched into a product. A lot of times we hear of good ideas that just never actually come to fruition. So share with our listeners, your guys' story.
Yeah, so it happened back in fall of 2014, which was my last year at Eckerd College, which is where I went to school. I was a student assistant for the baseball team at the time. And so it was an idea that was essentially just locker room talk, and something that a friend had voiced to me, and just the idea of drinking out of the bat. It was talked about as a koozie. It was talked about as a mug. And it was one of those things that I was sick of him talking about it. My dad owns a construction company, so I knew a lot of contractors. And so the first prototype was essentially me networking my friends and figuring out how to make one. So we started with a prototype, and then begin to show it to people, and then just whether it was the height, whether it was the width, whether it was how much it would hold, whether it would tip over, what it would look like, what would the cost be. You hear a lot of feedback when you have a prototype that nobody knows a lot about.
Yeah. What was the most difficult part of the manufacturing process to actually make the product?
Probably getting a prototype, because you have to share your ideas with someone, then they're willing to go all the way through with it. You know, a lot of people will be like, yeah, I'll do that for you, I'll help you. But nobody has spare time and nobody really wants to help. You know, you can incentivize, but it wasn't like, you know, it was going to be like a real make or break for a contractor, you know, subcontractor. But I think manufacturing was the hardest. You know, when we first started, I called maybe like 5 or 6 manufacturers, and I could only get one of them to take our first 100-unit order to test.
Wow.
And it's actually kind of cool, because now I go back to other people with quotes for like 5, 10, and 20,000 units, and they all return my calls now. Yeah, so that was probably the toughest process. I just had no idea what to do. Essentially, how I went about it was, I heard Sarah Blakely, who was the inventor of Spanx.
Okay.
She said she used ThomasNet to find manufacturers for her product. So I literally just went on ThomasNet, wrote down a bunch of different manufacturers, started calling.
Wow, man, that's the straight hustle right there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, staying on that topic of the startup process, you know, a lot of times when it's any startup company, it's one of the hardest things, right? You might have a vision, but capital's an issue. And so how'd you guys get the company off the ground? Was it friends and family? Was it just grinding? Walk us through that process.
It was essentially just my money. It was $1,000 that I saved up from 2 years of working for my dad, and then the summers just working a part of his construction.
Wow, man, that's awesome. So tell us where you're at today. I think I had read on a previous article when you guys first started, I think the first month you sold 16 mugs in the first month.
Yep.
Where are you guys at today?
So I think in May it was over 3,000 units, and I want to say, I don't know the final numbers for June, but it's going to be very, very comparable.
Man, congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
How about the makeup of the team? Tell us a little bit about who makes up Lumberland, you know, employee wise. We were just talking about, one of the things I love is, you know, you usually hear about the tech company that starts in the office garage, but you know, that's kind of your guys' story. You know, tell us what makes up the team. You guys just moved offices.
Yep. So the team started with myself, who was all production, and then I had somebody who did social media. That person's still with the company. His name's Will Trainer, and we just started like that. He would post and begin testing like advertising on Facebook and Instagram. And now we've got, my brother runs a shipping department, which is kind of funny because he saw a prototype and he was like, gonna buy this. Like, and so now he's a full-time salary employee, runs shipping, which is kind of cool. And I have my roommate from college who does the laser engravers. I've got 2 people that help out full-time for service, still does social. Tolan helps out with social. Rowdy, he also played down at Eckerd, is up helping in production. And I recently hired another person from Eckerd to help out as well. So
very cool.
Bunch of
so it's funny listening to you talk about, you know, it sounds like you've got a lot of friends and then some family working for you. And a lot of times you hear people try to make the comment, be very careful about hiring your friends and your family. And, I'm a part of a family-owned business, right? My business partner is my older brother. I have a cousin that works for me. And so, and our other business partner, someone that I've known since I was 10 years old. And, what would you say to people that ask you about that? Man, aren't you crazy hiring all your friends and your family?
I mean, I think you have to personalize it. I don't like depersonalizing advice. Like, just blanket advice is not good advice. I love my brother. We will have our differences from time to time, but it's nothing that's going to cause, a rift in business or our relationship. We can squash it. So it's not a problem. I mean, we go through where we'll see things differently from time to time, but it works.
Yeah, no, I find the same thing. It's when people ask about working with my brother, I say, if you can learn to get over the hump of the disagreement and communication, I actually think it's a competitive advantage, because there's 20 plus years, or for us, 30 years of currency of trust built, that, that they have the ability to speak into your lives differently than other people. And same thing with friends is, if you can have clarity of communications and expectations, the amount of trust that's already built is a huge competitive advantage for your company to move forward.
I agree. It's a really good point.
Yeah. So interesting thing too that I love about a company like yours is, not only are you this manufacturing company where you're producing a physical product, but I think previously we had spoken that 100% of your sales is online. So it's almost like you're a digital marketing agency and also a manufacturing company. Talk about just your guys's, approach online and how you guys have grown.
Sure. In the beginning, it was a lot of just getting it in the hands of people in the baseball community. People like Tyler and Steve, Eric Cressy was a huge help. It was just getting people to see it and let them think for themselves if it was cool or not, and just keep doing that over and over and over. I had nothing to lose, so I thought it was just blitz it out there, get it in essentially like the influencers, if you will, like people that look up to those people, and try to get it to be cool, or at least capture some sort of moment that would want somebody to buy something.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a background standpoint, though, it's not like you were coming out of a marketing agency online, right, where you had all of this experience. How did you guys tackle the social media monster?
Probably just a lot of testing is probably what I would say. What we threw out there, what we thought about it, what was the comments and the feedback, what was the click rate, what was, the overall, what was the rating. There's just a lot of testing. And like, even going back like 9 months ago, we had like 99 different ads over maybe like a year period of time. So it's like constantly testing what works. And yeah, I think that was really it, just testing it. Now we've kind of found a niche for what we like to do, and it's been working.
Yeah. Talk about that a little practically on a day-to-day basis or weekly when you're saying testing and process. I mean, do you have dashboards that you manage off of? Like, it seems like you're paying attention to your analytics a lot and your data. How important is that to your guys' business?
It's definitely important. I think you have to make sense of what you're looking at, and then you have to tie that into sales and then tie that into branding. So it's important, but I don't go too deep into it. I have Tolan and Will that'll do customer acquisition costs, that will fill in like likes, comments, shares. We're up on a daily basis to kind of see how much momentum an ad will have. And yeah, so just a lot of testing. I don't think we rely too heavily on data. We like to see what the sales say, what the data says. You know, if the data, what we think matters, says a lot of good things, but sales aren't there, we have to step back and think about why. So I think it's a lot of different things, not just data.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Where do you guys see kind of the most opportunity at as far as growth for your company?
I think all in all, we have to get production down, way down. So we're at 3 to 4 weeks right now. And I just recently invested into a machine that's going to help automate the process. It'll essentially be handcrafted, be laser engraved, but it's going to automate the most labor intensive portion of it, which is the epoxy, you know, coating the inside. And so we're going to have a robot do that. And my goal is to get production to 3 to 5 days. And, you know, we'll play a lot more offense in terms of, like, we have a lot of great designs, but we haven't been able to run them all out there because it's been all hands on deck, customer service, email, messenger. I don't even look at my own emails now. I have like a personal email that stuff comes through. But Tolan and Haley filter all that. But there's just like a lot of fires in terms of trying to get product out quicker.
Yeah.
And, so there's a Pinterest, Instagram, super, super hot right now. But we're not playing a lot of offense. We're playing a lot of defense right now because of where production's at. Good to have the demand, but I don't like playing defense. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. Going back to something that you had said originally, how you guys grew is you decided to try and find influencers or you know, brand ambassadors, whether it's Tyler or Steve or Eric Cressy. In the athlete space, you know, every athlete wants to have endorsement income or wants to be associated with certain companies. I would love to hear from you, being the business owner. How did you choose which athletes to associate your brand with, and why those specific athletes?
Got it. So are you talking about referring to Tyler and Steve, or just all the influencers that we use?
So I guess you can answer both. I mean, first off, of just, you know, when you're thinking from a company standpoint, when you're choosing to associate yourself with any influencer in general, what's driving those decisions? And then you can kind of talk to more of, you're very closely aligned to Tyler and Steven, and you can maybe talk about, because that's a different relationship than just an influencer.
Absolutely. I agree. So first off, it had to do with, did the person like the product? So if somebody liked a post of somebody else posting the product, I would immediately DM them. Be like, hey man, thanks so much for the like. Seems like you're interested in the product. Would you be interested in us sending you one? I literally did that 50 to 100 times in the beginning, and to where then it got to the point where I had people that wanted the product, that once momentum built it, I was like, couldn't get them the product. Like, I was trying to fulfill orders. I was like, sorry. But it was just like, were they interested? Did they have an audience? In the beginning, it didn't really matter. Now it's, you know, we're going to give somebody a comp. It's got to be for a reason. Like, why do you want to post? And yeah, essentially it's vice versa now. We don't do a lot of other way. So.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. I just think it's an interesting deal because I talked to some of our clients and then just athletes in general of how the industry has moved from endorsement income. It used to be solely based off of how good of a player you were, which is still, don't get me wrong, has a correlation to your social media following, but really just, you know, at the end of the day, like you said, is what type of following do they have and how important that is. And so I think it's good for our listeners, our athletes, to hear that, you know, there is a value to building out your platform, as long as it doesn't become a distraction to obviously your primary earning, you know, deal, which is playing. But
100%. Yep, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Transition a little bit to some business questions of here you are, you go into now all of a sudden being the founder and CEO of a very busy company where you're learning a ton of different parts of the business. It's kind of, you're building the airplane as you're flying it. How'd you learn about business, or where are you learning how to become really a great CEO and business owner?
So what happened at Eckerd was I had a back injury and I couldn't take myself out of pain. And so essentially what I did was stop playing for a little while. And I helped out as a student assistant, manager, whatever you wanted to call it. And throughout that time, I had to fill the void of what used to be waking up at 3 and going to the cage. And so I started reading books about business. I started journaling a lot, started watching YouTube videos, kind of just built up a little bit of a knowledge basis. And then when the bat mug was an option, I just ran with it. And I've been running with it since. Unfortunately, I haven't done a lot of reading lately. I do listen to a lot of podcasts. But it's just a lot of doing. Like I think for somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur, there's definitely a point where you've done enough reading and you have to go out and test it. You have to go try it. You have to go see if it's what you want to do. Like, it can sound really, really good on paper. It looks really, really good, your Instagram account. But a lot of things you experience that when you actually do it, you had no idea about. And so, yeah,
that's huge, man. I mean, at some point, right, you've got to move from just retaining information into action. And it's a scary leap, but because you're putting yourself out there, right, you're a little bit exposed, but it's also what gets you to the next step forward. As you mentioned, a few podcasts that you are listening to. What are a few of those podcasts?
Tim Ferriss, I've read some of his books. I like the way he thinks about things. I like some of the people that he's brought on. I think they're interesting thinkers. And I've listened to some Gary Vee, but I listen to so much Gary Vee that I don't really listen to him anymore. I just enjoy doing things more than hearing them, because it just makes me realize he's doing stuff all the time. I used to watch Daily Vee all the time, and I just rather be doing my own version of Daily Vee and watching his Daily Vee, even though I think it puts out great content.
Yeah, the beautiful thing is, if you actually listen to Gary Vee, he'd be fist pumping you right now, right? Because it's like, hey, I don't want you. I mean, I do want you to watch it, but I don't. Like, I want you to move. So it's I think he'd be proud of you right there.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I really did want to cover that we haven't yet was the name. How you came up with name. I think the lumber part, everybody can kind of figure that one up, but the back end of it, the lend. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the idea behind the lend was people are going to lend us their bats, and we're going to make it into mugs. And I mean, I guess in another mention, it was also about what are we going to do in the baseball community and give back. And it just felt right. Lumber, the lend, a little bit of a spinoff.
Yeah, I like it. What's the biggest mistake you guys have made in the first year, or I guess, in the first couple of years, and how has that mistake or failure kind of led to greater success?
So the most recent failure would probably be production. 3 to 4 weeks is too long. We had 10 to 14 business days, which is 2 to 3 weeks. And now we had to bump it to 3 to 4 weeks. So it's letting a lot of customers not getting product in their hand quick enough, or even over delivering on that time frame. And so it's been me scrambling, trying to find engineers to build a robot to make it go quicker, hiring people. We've hired 3 people in the last 2 months, and then another 3 part-time. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm in right now. It's trying to figure it out, how to get product out quicker. That's what we're solving. Probably the biggest failure because, like I said, playing defense is not a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk a little bit about what it's like managing a growing company as far as employees. You know, you obviously had a great, close relationship with your first employees. As you're adding people on, you know, how are you sourcing them? What are you finding difficulty? What do you look for in employees?
Like, I have a relationship with most of the, otherwise, you know, the way we were kind of in it and trying to get product out the door, anybody that was walking in, I was hiring. And so I think that kind of plays itself out. I wasn't incredibly focused on the hiring process. I've seen resumes. I don't give a shit about them. Like, it just means nothing. Like, I want to see the person in person. What do I know about? They work hard. What type of characteristics do they have? Are they willing to learn and grow? Do a lot of things, be flexible. That's a huge component of why I'm hiring full-time people. And yeah, I mean, just about everybody that I've hired full-time outside of Haley, who does customer service, I personally know.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Talk a little bit about, you said the flexibility and kind of, you know, wanting to work. You know, we live in this generation where there's a lot of this conversation of trying to hack life, right? Of work the least amount for the maximum output, and you know, the work-life balance. And here you are being a business owner, and I know you, right, there's not enough days in the hour. How are you thinking through that process? Are you trying to manage it? You know, speak to people that want to enter into being entrepreneurs or business owners.
So my experience has just been one that I'm very all or nothing type. And so throughout the course of business, throughout the course of Lumberland, haven't done a lot of other things. Just haven't. I've been fighting, great time to work out. I've got 2 workouts in this week, and I got 1 more that I've got to get in. But I don't have a lot of personal, you know, outings or get-togethers. I've just been really focused on the product, how to make it very high quality, and now how to get it out the door quicker. And so I wouldn't say that I have the whole life hack, time management figured out, but I'm trying to do a better job delegating and give people that want the ownership of a bigger role the opportunity to grow into it. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Cool. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What's the most rewarding thing about running your own business?
I'd probably say 2 things. One is that you're in control. So if you want to work 4 hours a week, and I'm just using that, came to mind, but not that much, you can do that. But if you want to work 120 hours a week, you can. It just has to do with your ambition and what you want to happen and how you're wound. And I think you learn a lot about yourself when either the business is growing or not growing. I still remember having conversations in Pete and Eric's office after the first month of selling 16 units. I remember thinking, I was like, I'm not going to make this a business. We had sold like that many units attributed to like me making $1 an hour. I wasn't going to live off that, you know? And so, yeah, I think you really get to see how ambitious you are and what you want to make of it. And then it's all there. So you either do it or you don't. And then at the end of the day, you look in the mirror and that's the results. And I think just the second component that I really like about owning at least Lumberland for me is I'm just not bothered by things that I thought would really scare me, like needing to own a house, have it all figured out, needing to do things that have you like finance secure. Like during the whole building phase, when I was living off of naps, I was sleeping on the floor. I was sleeping off the floor so that I wouldn't sleep so long and I would get up quicker so I'd go back to work. And it really wasn't that bad. You know, I think a lot of people fear things that just aren't that bad. Like I've been sleeping on a couch for 2 months. I could not sleep on a couch, but I just feel so in it right now that I don't want to leave knowing that I need to fix it. And I just couldn't stand the thought of taking a little bit of time off and getting my ass kicked, because then it's, you know, done.
Yeah, man, that's intense. One of my follow-up questions was going to be what do you attribute your success to? But just hearing you describe that, I mean, it's the ability to sacrifice, right? And just the flat out work ethic and grit. You know, talk a little bit about when you started off with Lumberland, and you and I had an opportunity to talk about just your passion for business in general. I mean, are you guys a company that sets goals and strategic plans and all that, or is it, hey, it's more of like day-to-day combat at this point?
I think it's a little bit of both. I like to talk to the employees because we're so small. I think it's like I have 9 full-time employees. So I like to talk to them, see where they want to go. And so those goals are essentially like, how can I help them map where they want to end? Because everybody wants to grow, especially in Lumberland right now. And so that's kind of the bigger picture goal, if you will. And then day to day, yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I'll let them know if I think we need to get a certain amount of units out on a given week, because that just helps them, you know, align their vision with mine. And if they have something that they don't agree with, it's a good time to bring it up, and then we could, you know, hash it out and then have a clear direction. But I'm a big day-to-day guy. I think when I played, I had such a strong focus on wanting to be a professional baseball player that I burnt myself out. And I worked super hard, but I didn't work in the moment as well as I could have. And I took away the enjoyment and beat myself. And I think now I'm enjoying the day-to-day more and more and more. And then I look up and half the year's gone and we've already out the year before. And, you know, I think projections are great, goals are great. But for me, I'm more of a day-to-day, make it better type of guy.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Of, you know, you hear that advice of never be complacent, and I don't know that I really agree with it. I agree with the intentionality that you always want to get progressively better and build, but and able to do that, I think there has to be an appreciation for the moment, you know, of what you're doing. I've heard it's, you need to be impatient over the long term, but very patient in the short term, of just being able to be thankful for where it is, and then use that joy and contentment to be able to move forward. So I think that's really wise that you shared that. And just even your experience of, I love for our listeners, you referencing back to an athlete of going, hey, I had this experience trying to pursue this goal. Here's where it went wrong. I learned from it and I changed. And something you said very early in the conversation that we put a lot of emphasis on with our clients is trying to shape the way that they think, right? You would mention, I like Tim Ferriss, I like these people because of the way that they think. Who are maybe some of those mentors, whether they're in your personal life or from afar, right? Authors or things like that, who shaped the way that you think about business and life in general?
A really hard question. I think I could answer life definitively. It's definitely my dad. My dad owns his construction company, and he still works every single day. It was bigger, now it's smaller. He just goes to work every day. I remember when I was younger, he would work during the week and work on the weekends, and he like never stopped. And that really showed me that work wasn't a bad thing. Or for him, it was like in his DNA. He had to do it. That was who he was. And so I think that's kind of given me some of the cover fire to do the 120-hour weeks, and people being like, where are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And I felt okay with how much I've worked, because I think it's just a part of me at the stage of life that I'm in. And so I think he's definitely been a mentor by his actions. And
Wow.
that's definitely impressed upon me.
Yeah, that's right. The old adage, so much more is caught than taught. And just what you're saying I think we've got to reaffirm the value of work in society in general, that, yeah, of course it's never great when it becomes such an idol that it robs you of joy. But for a lot of us that own our businesses or are successful, just even employees, it's not, it's not terrible that we go to work on Monday and we're not worried about hump day on Wednesday, and we're not, waiting for the weekend on Friday. It's more of, hey, light my hair on fire. I want to get out of bed and I want to go to work and I want to serve my clients, or, for you, I want to build this organization. And I think that that's really important that we model that kind of for the next generation, that work's a good thing,
Yeah, totally. I think if it makes sense to you, which I think is very, very important, I think if you're doing it to say you worked, that's a problem. If you're doing it to say you're putting in the grind, or you're expecting your work to make you super wealthy, you're probably headed in the wrong direction. Because a lot of work can be hard. And if you're not doing it because you want to do it for the actual day in, day out work, you're doing it for something that somebody else has put on a pedestal, or you have this idea it's going to make you super happy. I just don't know how that's going to turn out. And I guess from my perspective, I did it in baseball. It didn't turn out that well. Didn't get to my goal.
Yeah. What advice would you give to another athlete that, whether they're coming out of having a 15-year MLB successful career, or, it's guys in our situations whose careers probably ended way before we wanted them to, and they want to transition into business, what advice would you give them? Where do they start?
They start at wherever they're interested. What's their interest, what they're curious about. I think they should just follow what they want to know more about. And that's, under someone, or reading a book, listening to a podcast, having a conversation. I think that's a place to start. And then that'll kind of feed itself. And I never would have thought YouTube videos, journaling in the morning, a book here and a book there would lead me to where I am right now. But I followed what I was interested in, what was something I wanted to know more about. And then I just went deep in there.
Yeah. What, and you may not be able to recall any, but any books you would recommend? What were the ones that popped to the top of your mind?
Sure. The 4-hour work week was interesting. There was a book I read. The One Thing, that was interesting. I think that's written by, it's like Tim Keller or something. The guy who owns Keller and Williams, I think, like that.
Okay.
One book. Actually, I'd probably say wasn't one book. It was more journaling. I think I found a lot more success journaling when no one was up. And what that allowed me to do was clarify my thoughts and understand what I was thinking and why, and where I wanted to head. Why was I doing such and such? And then kind of allowed me to audit myself. And I think from that, I gained perspective and clarity. And so I think probably because one book doesn't really jump off the page at me, if you will, journaling was huge. It just helped a ton, helped me focus, and it helped me know where I really was at. I think kind of push the bullshit to the side. I think it was easy at that age, 23, 24, to just do what people tell you to do and to not make sense of it. And I tried to make sense of what I was doing.
Man, that's incredible. I think it's really wise, especially in a culture where it's information overload, right? We can trick ourselves to believing we have progress by getting in the car, throwing on another podcast, reading another book, doing XYZ. And we haven't really ever judged our own thoughts, our own decision-making framework. And, to create that space when you're quiet, to have the discipline to get up and to journal. And even though it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, just that act of being with your own thoughts and being able to ask the questions of why am I thinking this way, man, that's super wise. Yeah, that's better than any one book recommendation. I think it's great. And just going back to the advice to the athlete that you would share, to find something and go deep into it. We had Eric Cressy on here a few episodes ago, and that was Eric's advice was, go dive into something, learn every part of the business, and play the long game too, and realize that just the way that they've had to work up through their athletic career, they're not going to instantly go to the mountain peak. They've got to put the grind and the work in and figure that out. So I think there's a ton of wisdom in that. Finishing up with just a few more questions. I mean, this is a podcast about money, business, and life, and we obviously talk a lot about investing with a lot of our other guests. For yourself, one of the questions we ask is, what's the one best investment you've made? And it could be with money, it could be with time, it could be with resources. What pops out to mind when you think about investing?
I would definitely say working on myself. So, so many people want to help people or give advice or put their 2 cents in. Social media is huge for a lot of things, and it's a good place, don't get me wrong. But I just think investing in knowing more about yourself, that's been huge. Going back to that journal and writing stuff down that made no sense. but I thought it was what I should believe or what my beliefs were. And after I written it down and looked, I couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't stand behind it. And so investing in my own thoughts and where I really was and what I wanted to do, and then go do it, probably has been the greatest return of anything that I've done. Yeah.
Man, that's great. And then really following up, last question is, and probably a lot of this comes out of your journaling efforts. We talk about what is success, right? I think it's a cliche question, but I think at the end of the day, it's the most important question is, why are we here, on earth, and what is going to bring us the joy and the value? So for yourself, how would you define success?
Probably doing what you want to do every day, or doing what you want to do for your reasons.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, I appreciate obviously the time that you've given us, and I think there's a lot for our listeners to hear. One last thing is where can we find more about you, Lumberland? How do we get our hands on a mug? I know there's some lead time. Hopefully it's 5 to 7 days soon, but where do we find you on social and all that good stuff?
Yeah, we're Lumberland Co. on Instagram, Lumberland on Twitter. We have a Facebook page. We have a website, lumberland.com. And yeah, I'm not active really on any platforms. If you look at my Instagram account, it's actually kind of funny. I've got 3 posts of when Lumberland started, 3 different places I was: New York, Arizona, and Florida. And that was like where Lumberland started, getting research and stuff like that. And then nothing.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I think our listeners will be a little gracious with how much time you're spending other places.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And one last thing, I noticed you guys got MLBPA licensing, so that's relatively new. Congrats on that.
Thank you. It's we have a lot of work to roll out a lot of new designs, but hopefully we're headed in that direction, and we'll be releasing them soon.
Yeah, well, exciting stuff to come, and we're looking forward to it. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you so much for listening to the Athlete CEO podcast. I hope you enjoyed our show today and are ready to take action on the advice from today's episode. Our goal with the Athlete CEO podcast is to make it the go-to resource for athletes and entrepreneurs looking to take their game to the next level. Love the show? You have any suggestions on how we can improve? We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, tweet, and share your thoughts. We do our best to read every single one. We'll see you next week with another world-class episode.